Hello, my name is Judith and I welcome you to Cordial Couture. For those of you who are new to this channel, what I did is about a year ago I purchased the Lutterloh pattern kit, and I'm a novice, or not a novice, but an intermediate level sewist, and what I typically do on my videos is that I share with you the different projects I make with the Lutterloh system. So there's usually an introduction, then we analyze the pattern, I construct the garment, look at the final result, and then I give you my comments on what I think about the pattern, and I'll present my next project. So that's what I typically do. But today's video is a bit different because today we're going to talk about adjusting pant patterns. Because throughout the last year or so, when I started making pants with the Lutterloh system kit, the first pair of pants was a standard pair of pants, and it clearly did not fit. So what I did is that I then compared a standard pair of pants to a full figured pair of pants, the patterns, to see what's different, and then I made a full figured pair of pants, and those suited me much better. So that's fine, great. And I looked at my different, I have my basic kit, and then I have maybe 4 or 5 supplements, and out of that I have maybe 34 full figured pants patterns that I can choose from. That's great. But what happens if there's a standard pants that interests me? How do I go about adjusting it? So today we're going to look at this pattern here, which is a pattern from last winter's booklet or supplement, and it's a standard pair of pants. So my primary objective is to take a standard pair of pants and adjust the pattern based on the fact that I have a full figure, or a full tummy if you want. So I did some research and I read about full tummy adjustments, and what they said is that the most important thing that you have to watch for is that the method you're choosing will increase the front crotch, because that's where your crotch length, because that's where your stomach is. So there's examples where they say, well, just take out the darts or add a dart, for example. That gives width to your waist, but it doesn't necessarily increase the length of your front crotch. So I found 2 methods that do that. The first one is slash and spread, and I did do that method in my episode 11, which I will link below. But the other method is something that somebody recommended to me in viewing my channel. They put a comment, and it's called the TopDownCenterOut. And what that method is, it's a method that was introduced in about 2022 by somebody called, let me just look, I have my notes here, Ruth Collins, who published in the Threads magazine, and I'm going to put the link in the description below too, so you can read her original article on how to do the top-down, center-out. And what it basically does is, from what I understand, the advantages of this is that it's not just adjusting to fit your full tummy, but in general, I think a few videos ago I said I don't do muslins for my pants, I don't have the time. But in reality, we do have to do a muslin for a pair of pants, because even if we have a standard hip size, we're all made different. So like some of us are X's, some of our triangles like this, we've got a round tummy, or H's I think, or sometimes we're crooked because we have our hips not the same length, or we've got scoliosis, or we've got something going on that's different. So nobody has a standard body that doesn't need a pant adjustment. So we do have to do a muslin for a pair of pants. And what the top-down, center-out approach does, or the advantages of it, are that, from what I understand, is that, first of all, it does explain if you have a full tummy and you want to make it larger, here's how you go about doing that. But that you only have to do one muslin, and then you keep using the same muslin, and the muslin is only for one leg. You don't have to do both legs for your muslin, so that's easier to adjust. That's some advantages. And the other one, from what they say, is that it respects the design of the pants. Because if I have a pair of pants and there are darts in it, that's a design element. So in order to adjust my pants, I have to take out the darts, and that changes the design of the pants. So this one really does honor the original design of the pants and lets you adjust your trousers based on your different, the way your body is made. So today we're going to do the top-down, center-out approach. And what I've found for you is that there's a channel called The Crooked Hem. And in there, there are 9 videos that are about 10 minutes each, so they're not that long. But she really details the basic principles of the top-down, center-out, and why we're doing that approach. How to calculate your size based on your different realities, because it's not just do you have a fuller tummy, but sometimes you have larger thighs, or sometimes you lean forward or you lean backward, and that does affect the size of your pants. So she gives you different examples on how to choose the right size based on a standard pattern. Then once she does that, then she shows you how to add more ease to your pattern so that you can play with it. And then she shows you how to put on your muslin and adjust it, and then transfer the changes to your pattern so that you can then make your pair of pants. So those 9 videos I'm going to link down below, and they're really useful. I recommend you watch them. And I also add 2 more that she provides, because the first 9 are based on a regular waistband, but if you need an elastic waistband or a waistband with a yoke like for jeans, there's a different method. So you'll have 11 videos linked in the description below that I recommend that you watch. What I'm going to do is I took my measurements for my hip, and I'm 116 width for my hips. I do have a stomach, and so in order to accommodate for that, I'm doing 120 centimeters for my pattern. So I cut out, or I traced out the 120 centimeters, and I'm going to show you how I'm adjusting the pattern based on that. Then I will cut out the muslin and show you how I construct the muslin. I will then try on and make the adjustments off camera, because it requires 2 mirrors and I don't have a big enough room to set up my filming gear and all that. So I'll do that off camera, but you do see examples in the links I provide below. Once I've got those finished, then I will come back and we'll look on how to adjust our paper patterns to take into account what we did in our fitting. And that'll be today's video, is how to go about fitting a pair of pants with a top down center out. So I'm going to change my camera and we'll look at the pattern. Okay, so here is my pattern. What I did is I have my hips are 116, but I traced the pattern based on 120 centimeters because this is a standard pair of pants. Now, if I had chosen a pair of full figured pants, I would have kept the 116 centimeters and not increased the size, because I know that the full figured does suit me. But this, because it's a standard, I chose the 120. So what it is, I traced my pattern. I used black to trace my original pattern. So it's just a regular tracing of your pant pattern. And I put in my darts and I put in my line for my front fly. Then the next thing I did is I traced my pocket. So here's my pocket for the size 120, and I put it underneath my pattern so that I could line it up here, supposing it was underneath, and I can complete and fill out the side of the pants, because for our muslin we're not going to do a pocket, so we're just going to have the right part of the pants there. So the first thing you do is you fill in your side here to have the full side here of your pants. Then after that, she explains that we have to add in extra seam allowance here on the outside leg. Now she's using patterns such as Berta, or I'm not sure what brand it is, but those include a seam allowance. So she says include 1/2 to 1 inch of a seam allowance, but because Lutterloh does not have a seam allowance, I added 1.5 inches. So from the very bottom all the way up here, I just followed the line of the outside of the pants and added 1.5 inches up to here. That's the next thing I did. After that, she says you have to add 2 inches to the top of your pair of pants. So you first start by taking your line here and using a ruler and using the same angle. Continue the line up in the same and go up 2 inches. And then she says if you measure more than 5'6", or you have a size 16 or higher, add an extra 2 inches. So I have to go up 4 inches because I have both conditions. I wear a size 16 and I'm 5'9", so instead of 2 inches, I went up 4 inches. So that's the top of the pants, and then you fill in the top of the pants all the way to the side of your seam, and you put in your lines and you complete your darts. The next thing you have to do is you have to get your grain line. So if I pull this down here, you see that properly. So the bottom of my pants is they're straight lines. So I think I measured maybe 10 centimeters or 10.5 centimeters in 2 spots here where it's straight. Drew a grain line and then extended that grain line all the way up to the top of my pants, like this. Because what you have to do then is, the last step is, and I put those changes in green, is where my hip starts here. I go to the 1.5 inches, And now I have to draw a straight line parallel to the grain line all the way up to the top of the pants, like that. So that's why I extended my grain line so that these lines are the same, and then you just complete the corner like that. So those are the adjustments that I made for my pair of pants. And the one thing she says is that when you cut out your muslin is not to do the full length of the pants, just a bit shorter, because you want your pants to hang straight. So you don't want them to be affected by your foot or something. So you want to see the pants hems fall straight. So that's the front piece, and you saw the pocket. So the pocket is cut out based on my 120 centimeters, and I'm not cutting it out because depending on the adjustments I make, I may need to adjust the pocket. So this is the back leg. Again, the inside crotch and the inside seam we don't change. I just put in a seam allowance so they can cut out my muslin. It's going to be the same kind of concept. So you draw your darts. All my pattern is in black, and then I added 1.5 inches to the side all the way along and up to here. And I added 4 inches, and then I completed the pattern. And then I went to the hip here, and with my grain line, I measured a straight line and then filled in here with pink the remaining corner. So this is a much smaller adjustment here than it is on the front. So it's rather a straightforward adjustment. So, and again, you're going to make sure that the muslin you cut out is going to have a shorter leg. Sorry, I'm hitting my tripod here. So that's the front and the back. And the last part, sorry, put all these pieces of paper on, so is the waistband. So I cut out the waistband based on the pattern. I cut out 110 centimeters. And I put in my seam allowance for top and bottom, so I have 5/8 on top and on the bottom, and a bit on the ends. And I put 110 centimeters. It's a bit wider than my actual waist. I think my waist is either 106 or 108 centimeters, but I put it a bit longer so that I have room to play with it. And because when we do their pants, it's going to overlap for the button. So that's this piece. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out my muslin based on those modifications to the patterns, and I'll show you how to assemble the muslin. Okay, so we're back. One thing I forgot to mention about the top-down, center-out method is that on the crooked hem, she recommends that we analyze the pattern and determine the amount of ease, because not all pants are well fitted. Some of them are loose, and she says look at pictures of things online. This is Lutterloh. I don't have an example online. We just have drawings. So what I did is this is my front pattern here, and I went from the hip to all the way here, and I measured the length, and that's 28 centimeters times 2 because I have 2 legs, so that's 56 centimeters. And I did the same thing on the back here where I have my hip measurement. I went across here and I measured 33 centimeters times 2, so that's 66. So if I had 56 and 66, that gives me 122 centimeters, and my pattern is for 120 centimeters, which means I have 2 centimeters of ease for the entire hip circumference. Since I have 2 legs, it's 1 centimeter per leg. So when I go to fit these pants, if I want to respect the style, I'll give myself 1 centimeter of ease at the hip level. So that's just another side note for the adjustment. I'll just put this away. I cut out my belt here, and I did put facing in it, and I put stronger facing than I normally would do so that I have a solid belt, and I'll probably use the same facing for my pants. So I folded it in half, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a different color thread, so probably black, and I'm going to sew along my seam allowance here. So at 5/8 of an inch, I'm going to sew all along so that I see where the belt would actually be, because this is going to be the seam allowance. So this is the real width of the belt, and when I go to adjust, I'll be using the seam allowance to know where to attach the pants. So I'm going to sew that all along, and then here I measured my middle back, so I'm going to sew a line down this way, so that when I put this on my back, I'll know this is right in the middle, and then when I turn it like this, I'll be able to compare. So I will sew that. So I'll show you once it's done. Then I have both my front and my back. It's pretty much the same concept here. Here's one. Oops, I've got that wrong way. Here we go. So on both I traced with carbon paper the original pattern, and I went to the hip. I didn't go all the way down because I know it's 1.5 inches all the way down. So this is the original, and this is where I'll be working for my full tummy adjustment. So what I'm going to do is on both the front and the back, I'm going to sew my darts, and then I'm going to sew my pants 1.5 from the bottom all the way to the hip. I'm going to leave this open because this is where I'm going to be adjusting my pants. And the same thing, I'm going to sew the inseam here with my 5/8 that I had planned. So I will do all that and I'll show you the end result. So here's my belt. So as I said, I sewed in a different color the seam allowance. And here's my middle back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put on my belt, making sure this is in the middle back. This is going around to the front, and I'll figure out what the center front is. And I'm going to always pin my garment along this line here because this is the bottom of the waistband. So that's my reference point for the waistband. Let's say the waistband is here. Then I have my leg. So I sewed the back dart. I sewed the front dart. I sewed the inside seam here, the leg seam. And then I sewed the outside seam from the bottom 1.5 inches all the way to the hip, and I stopped there because I'm going to be measuring that. So what I'm going to do is attach the waistband on me, and I'll pin this closed. Then I'm going to, there's no seam allowance in the crotch right now, right? I didn't add a seam allowance, so I'll pin the back seam allowance here. It has to hit the center, and the front one would hit the center front. So this is the don't calculate the fly, calculate this line here. And you're going to play, because we've added 4 inches, so normally if it was the actual pattern, that would line up here. But what we're going to do is adjust based on our crotch length and our full belly. So it might end up here, and then that's where we're going to pin. So once you've got your center here, your top, and you've got your crotch lined up properly, you're going to look at what that looks like, and is your leg falling straight, or is it tilted this way or this way? So you're going to straighten your leg so that it goes straight, and then you're going to make other adjustments. So that's top down. Then you're going to, once you've got that lined up, you're going to go from the middle, and you're going to work your way to the side here and play with the side to make sure it goes around your stomach or your other parts of your abdomen, depending, or the backside, depending on how you're made, and you're going to adjust it. So I'm going to try that out, see how long it's going to take me to figure out the adjustments, and I'll be back. Okay, so here's my muslin. It actually only took me about 10 minutes. I was lucky. So for me, the fact that I increased it 2 sizes. So what I did was I pinned the back here to the middle back, and I used the same original seam line and for my waist, and that fit fine. So there's nothing to do in terms of height on my pattern here. I don't need to do any changes on the 4 inches above. But what I do have to do is the changes on the side here, the front side. So here's my original pattern piece, and I have to go all the way out here to fill in for the full stomach. So I traced the red line from the original seam line with a marker on my muslin. And on the back, it's the same thing, but I have less to adjust on the back. It's really on the front for the stomach. So I can keep my darts. And I also did, I measured my waist. So here is I put a line. So this is my center front. So that means I have all this extra too much for my belt. So I will cut that off. So I'm going to unpin this, bring in the paper pattern pieces, and we'll adjust the paper pattern pieces. Okay, so here's my belt pattern piece. So I take this is where I said it was long enough with these arrows, so I'm just lining it up. And I traced here a line to say this is long enough for my belt. So that's the belt adjustment. That's the easiest one. Then we have the back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, oops. Oh, by the way, when you sew your muslin, I recommend that you do basting stitches rather than regular stitches because it's easier to unpick afterwards, I guess, with hindsight. So I'm putting my piece here, and this is the adjustment I had made in red. So I'm putting my pattern pieces to align like this. And I'm just tracing the red here, adding this to my back pattern piece so it matches. I can see through the pattern paper. And I've made that adjustment here. And then the front. Again, we take our adjustment, the muslin piece here, lay it flat. And this is the part of it. So it affects both. We widen it, but don't forget there's a pocket on this side. So I'm going to put my pattern on top. And what I started by doing was lining it up. Then I traced the extension here like this and hooked it up to the hip. But then I said, okay, there's a pocket that goes there. So I put my pocket and I lined up the slash line with the original slash line. This is where it was before, because the end of it basically is what the pocket's going to look like. So I traced the end of the pocket here, but I don't want that wide of a pocket opening. So I moved it over here and drew a slanted line like that. So that's this, which corresponds to about the same width that was here. I just moved it over here. And then I also drew that slanted line here to here, which corresponds to what's this new slanted line. So they should match up. Just make sure they match up, because this is where, this is the original pant pattern. So I'm not going to, when I cut this out, I'm going to cut it like that. So those are the pattern adjustments. I will just turn my camera and we'll wrap up. There you have it. That's the result of my top-down, center-out adjustment method. I'm really happy with the method. In reality, I didn't have to make that many adjustments. What I conclude from it is that if I'm taking the full figured pair of pants, a pattern from the Lutterloh system, all I have to do is, every time I do that, is add 1.5 inches on the outside seam, and then add maybe the 2 inches on the top, the basic 2 inches, and then go straight. And that means that it's always the same adjustment I make to the pattern to do my fitting. I fit my pants and then I adjust my pattern. And if I'm using a standard pair of pants, for me right now, all I have to do is increase 2 sizes and it works. So I'm really happy that I can do standard and full figured pants in the Lutterloh system. As promised, this is the next project. So we're going to actually sew these pants. What I'm going to use as a fabric is this camel type fabric. It's fabric for pants. It's a synthetic fabric. I brought it at Crib Tissu in the Second Life section. And so I don't know what kind of fabric it is, but I know it's not. It's either polyester or some kind of blend of something. So I need a pair of pants for business travel, so that's coming up. So I'll be making those pants, and in my video I'll also be using those little magnets to cut out the fabric, so I'll show you that. So all I have to do left is cut out my pattern without the seam allowances based on the adjustments, and I'm ready to go for my next project. So if you haven't subscribed, I invite you to do so and like the videos and share them. As always, you're more than welcome to leave comments. I really benefit from them. And it's actually from a comment from a viewer where I learned about the top-down, center-out approach. And if ever you decide to make one of the patterns or the garments that I have in my videos, always read the comments below, because people do leave suggestions on how to make improvements in the terms of the technique, so it's really useful. So we'll see each other next time. Bye.